What is a bug? A bug, by definition, is a part of a code that causes an error. But with that being said,
not all bugs are bad. We're going to kind of go over where it came from as a term and what are their kind of purposes in coding, like from a standpoint of what do they correct and what do they lead to in terms of pop culture and that over time.
So starting with bugs, the history of bug, the original term came from a bug found back in a actual PC itself.
It was the Harvard Mark II.
The Harvard Mark II, yep. Go more into history there. But the bug actually stopped. It was a moth inside of the coils of the computer, stopped it from actually processing the code, causing the official term bug to be released.
Yeah, it was actually discovered by Grace Hopper, who's a rear admiral in the Navy. Her team discovered it while kind of looking through a computer glitch. And it's, of course, popularized the word. Of course, the word dates back actually technically farther than Grace Hopper, but it was her team that made it popular. They're also well known for taping this bug into their logbook, and I believe it's actually located at the Smithsonian.
With that being said, bugs were originally considered to be bad. Nowadays, with programmers, you look at bugs, video games to be more specific against it, bugs have actually had a lot of, let's say, positive impact on things.
A lot of influence, and they've shaped how some games have been made. They've taken bugs that were discovered in the early gaming days, and they might have made it into a fun or neat feature. They might have made it into a difficulty feature, kind of like Space Invaders. The Speed Demon bug actually was caused by the fact that as you defeated the enemies in that game, the processor was able to compute the data faster, thus speeding up the game unintentionally and making it more difficult, which has then led to games like Tetris or...
Yeah, I say Tetris has a bug. Doom was another one, the rocket jump, another good thing that people, what was not meant to be, there was an oops in the code, became very popular.
And of course, we've seen things like that rocket jump then come into games like Team Fortress or a lot of your battle games where suddenly the rockets don't affect you and they don't kill you. But it's all stemmed from bugs.
Yeah, with that being out there, bugs, even though they've originally been considered to be oopses in codes, from a coding standpoint in the background, some codes, there's a backdoor put in, there's programming data put in, there's the testing bugs put in that they don't get taken out or somebody stumbles upon them eventually.
Yeah, some might theorize that the gaming world, Mario, for instance, in level 1, 2, where you can jump on top of the level, get to the end, you suddenly get to a world selector. Was that meant to be in there? Was it an actual testing oops of, hey, by the way, we put it in there so we could test later levels, but then we forgot to take it out? Or was it an intentional bug, so to speak, built in by the developers as an Easter egg?
Yeah, and that's another way to look at these bugs is that, yes, people do consider bugs when something happens to your OS or something in your development that you need crashes. Absolutely no bug, we get all upset. But from the same time, it's the exact same process. Coming from my coding background is you're doing your best to learn. You have to hit bugs. You have to hit these computing errors to actually learn and develop your own code to figure out how things are going to act, especially as times have changed now.
Yeah, sometimes they lead to innovations.
Exactly.
Accidentally, right? Adobe's content-aware fill came from a more or less bug within their code or an unintentional mishap that became so popular within the community that they decided to develop in that way to build content-aware fill. The Excel, there was the year 1900 leap year bug that was accidentally put in there that made it compatible with Lotus 1, 2, 3.
Correct, yeah.
Bugs also from the programming side of things, we take bugs and we go, okay, how can we learn from that? It pushes us as coders to see scenarios in a different way and to then try and build around those, and intentionally then we're making ourselves better as we advance that.
So people have been asking, like, bugs, how do these happen? What do you miss? When it comes to languages, right now actively, there's somewhere between 700 to 1,000 active languages right now. And if you were bilingual talking to a person, like 700 to 1,000 languages, that's pretty hard to memorize.
And that's active.
And that's active, yeah. I mean, if you want to go back into the flavors of everything, plus all the old ones that are out of date, I mean, you're
10,000 plus.
Yeah, say tens of thousands of codes right there. So the issue becomes your older stuff, Java, that used to be used heavily for your web page development, things like that. as those start to kind of, I don't want to say phase themselves out and become less than popular, you get new codes that come in. Python's one of the newer ones that's really taken over, and trying to transfer codes. That's where you see a lot of the glitches. I see a lot of the glitches is trying to take some old code, turn into something new. They're not quite. You're speaking a overseas Mexican Spanish versus a Spain Spanish versus a down south Spanish. I mean, yes, they're all a Spanish language, but you still get your flavors of it all.
And in addition to that, you're talking about multiple developers from all around the world building code the way they see it, right? Not everybody sees or programs the same.
It's a thought for sure.
Yes, there's some standard practices and there's some good practices, but not everybody necessarily follows everything. They're now trying to merge those things together to take a piece of software, right? Microsoft doesn't build every piece of software that runs on Windows. And in turn, you have that interaction of a third-party developer with the OS. Same thing goes in Mac OS, right? That code can interact in ways unforeseen, right? You can't, as a human coder, right? You can't foresee everything. Of course, now in today's advent, we have AI coding, right? The people making use of vibe coding.
Yeah.
Not always the best case. I mean,
well, I was going to say, even with testers, if you look at how testers have changed over the years, back in the 70s, 80s, you had a team of people who would just try whatever they were thinking the code was supposed to do, and they would test it their way. Now, if you look at Microsoft, they release things a little more premature.
Yeah.
They let the general public test it because it's
sometimes not for the best results.
Not always for the best, but it's a more real-world scenario. If you have a team that's testing it, they know what it's supposed to do, or they have an idea what it's supposed to do because they know the coder, they know the person who wrote the code. Whereas if you just drop it out on the general public early without it being tested, you're going to get the real world, what's going to happen, what's going to crash, what are the true bugs.
The age-old adage of your dev team testing it versus an actual user, right? Funny meme comes to mind. A guy develops bulletproof vest, right? Developer, in this case, hands the bulletproof vest to the tester and says, hey, by the way, yeah, shoot me. The guy shoots him in the leg, right? User used it in a completely different way than what the developer meant it to be used. Thus, could be seen as a bug, but that's what developers deal with. They look at a product and they say, look, this is the way to use it.
Yeah.
They follow that and they're like, oh yeah, it works perfect.
Exactly. And that's kind of where I see the term bug. From a language standpoint, I program in 4 different languages. I've been programming for about 20-something years. How I think versus how you think versus how somebody out there is going to think, it's not going to be the same. And how you learned, whether you learned in a school, whether you taught yourself, whether you're watching videos like this, trying to figure things out, everybody's going to learn, think, and process differently. So while bugs, yes, in general are a oops or something in the code, I would say bugs are nothing more than people learning, people developing, and most of the time, I see bugs to be a positive. I see it to be a what is going to come from this? What did we learn from this? And
and quite frankly, it's one of those pieces. Without bugs, we wouldn't have the development that pushes forward either. If you don't have problems, you don't have people trying to solve anything, which doesn't then drive society forward. Of course, back to Grace Hopper as a programmer and a pioneer in our field. Of course, she is well known for being one of the co-founders or co-creators of COBOL.
Yep.
Surprisingly, yes, COBOL still exists in today's society, primarily in banking or in government. She's also well known for the idea or the philosophy of ask for forgiveness rather than permission, right? She made that very well famous. From a coder standpoint, she's also, by some seen as a role model because how many coding engineers or programmers have a U.S. Navy vessel named after him, right? The USS Hopper. So from our standpoint, it's a really interesting topic to kind of dive into, the idea of, look, this term that's been made famous in pop culture, and that was started all back by a programmer and just an actual legitimate bug, which doesn't actually hold through in very many cases.
So with that being said, I think we've touched on a bug from the 1,000-foot view. Definitely you can dive way more. And this is a fun topic to really get into with people, is bugs, all the different bugs out there, from gamings to software, hardware. I mean, there's so many bugs out there that you could really spend a whole day going over bugs and history of bugs and languages and all the different bugs and all the different languages. But I'd say we got a good 1,000-foot view touch on it. Yeah,
I mean, I think back to my childhood days, right? I grew up playing Pokemon. One of the most famous bugs in the gaming world, right, is Missingo, or at least that's how I grew up pronouncing it, but missing number is how it's spelled. it was a coding glitch that resulted in a glitchy Pokemon on screen that could cause you to get infinite items, right? Mm-hmm. Things that bugs aren't always, terrible things. There's sometimes memorable moments in your childhood, memorable moments in society that actually drive innovation. So
yeah,
I think that's a good, well-rounded way to kind of round out the topic.
I would agree. With that being said, we'd like to thank everybody for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, share. You got questions or comments? Yeah, make sure to leave some comments. I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say.
Thank you.